Welcome back to the Reflect Academy. This video is part 2, and we are going to be talking about the principles of note-taking. Frictionless, append only, backlinking entities, associating notes with time and space, and always including the why. But first, I want to start off with a quick introduction because I want to talk about the personal nature of note-taking. So we're going to start with these principles, but you're going to need to adapt everything around your note-taking to your own preferences, your own brain, your own style of thinking. And I think these principles are a good way to start, but this is not some template to copy. This is not some system that you need to follow exactly to the T. It's really a groundwork, or I guess more of a framework that you can use to take notes. And there are very good fundamentals to start off with, but always remember note-taking personal. So everything from the exact tool you use to the format to even what you include in your notes, that's all going to depend on you. And note-taking is a form of our thinking. And that means that what the notes actually look like on the page are entirely going to depend on how your brain works. But ultimately, you will get a representation. If you remember from the first video, I showed this map. This is my brain, all of my different nodes here that are notes with thoughts and ideas and meetings and peoples and books and all kinds of things that exist in my brain. And this is one of the nice things about taking notes is that regardless of what tool you're using, even if you don't get a map like this, you do get some kind of visual representation that will make things easier to recall in your mind. And lastly, I just want to mention the importance of starting a good note-taking habit. I think this is one of the most important things about taking. It doesn't really matter how you take notes, as long as you start a habit. And remember that your note-taking style is inevitably going to evolve and adapt over time, as you as a person do as well. So don't feel any sense of rigidity with how you take notes. Give yourself a little bit of freedom and really just focus on starting a habit and trying to take notes in a way that just really feels like it matches and meshes with your mind incredibly well and comfortably. So let's get started. All right, let's start with the first principle, frictionless. Everything around your note-taking should be frictionless. And what we mean by that is that things, thoughts, ideas, meetings, anything you think of should flow from your brain into your notes with the least amount of friction as possible. Friction can look like a bunch of different things when it comes to note-taking. So if we are thinking about our own systems, if we are using a good old-fashioned pen and paper in a notebook, I might be in the shower, out for a walk or something, and suddenly inspiration might strike, but I don't have my notebook with me. By the time I am back at my house and I'm ready to write it down in my notebook, I might have forgotten it, or maybe even just forgotten some of the meat of the details of it. That is friction. If you open your note-taking app and it takes forever to load, that is friction. If you have to tap on a bunch of buttons to get to a page in your note-taking app to where you can start recording your thoughts, that is friction. Friction even exists in things where we don't even think about it. Like there's friction in our handwriting, there's friction in our typing, there's even friction in our speaking because I can't talk as fast as I can think. So there's friction everywhere, but we want to try and reduce it as much as possible. So when thinking about our note-taking is really just writing, and writing helps clarify our thoughts. So when we add friction into that, it reduces our clarity of thinking. And that's why frictionless, or a lack of friction, is so important with note-taking. It directly leads to more clear thinking. And so our tools should be as fast and decision-free as possible to avoid this disruption. So a decision might be your note-taking app asking you which folder to record something in when you open it. And a solved piece of that might just be opening your note-taking app on any given page that's just ready for you to record a thought. This is actually a huge reason why people praise Apple Notes, by the way. It's incredibly fast as a tool, it's technically capable, but it's also just convenient. It asks very little of you cognitively. It's just always ready to record a thought as quickly as possible. And it turns out that's what we naturally gravitate to with note-taking, capturing our thoughts as quickly as possible. So always remember this, whether it is your own systems or you're seeking a tool or something, always strive for the least amount of friction as possible. And to give an example of that, of how you can kind of use new technology, With the new AI voice transcribers, I now take most of my notes using a voice note. So I can just click into here and I can start recording a voice note, and it gets transcribed within my daily note with perfect human level accuracy, or near perfect, I guess. So that's a way that you can reduce friction in your note taking. And I also have those set up on my mobile phone so that there is a shortcut on my home screen where I can just start recording a voice note immediately. I also have my action button on the item set up to open my note-taking app. So these are things that you'll develop over time. There's a ton of different things you can do to reduce your friction in note-taking, whether it's something like that, taking voice notes, or just pinning the notes that you use regularly on the side. So you can see I've got my ideas note here. So when I have an idea, I just know to write it down immediately. Okay, let's go on to the second principle, append only. This is something that's new for people, and even though there's a little bit of a learning curve to it, it actually provides a deep amount of psychological comfort because you don't need to worry about editing your notes. So always add new info to your existing notes. Don't replace information. If you think of having like an eraser in your notes, never use the eraser. Always just append. And that's just because it's how our memory works. You, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, your brain doesn't have the ability to just kind of turn memories on and off, or turn, certain thoughts on and off. We can try with things like meditation or, more unhealthy ways. But in reality, our memory just does not work in a off-on switch like that. So don't worry about deleting things because you don't want to delete things. You only want to append. And don't worry about capturing too much information. One of the benefits of network note-taking is that you don't have to worry about this. So by network note-taking, I just mean using backlinks. So for example, if I, wanted to create a note on the principles of note-taking, I can create a backlink there, and that will now lead to a new note page. So that's what we mean by network note-taking. And one of the benefits of this is that you can just keep adding things. I don't have to delete it. So if I decide to add a principle or change the principles of note-taking, don't think that's going to happen, but I can go in there and just create a new edit on top. And then I'll be able to go back in time and see that I did in fact change my principles, and it might be useful to me later on to know how those principles have changed over time. Another great example of this is just in the daily note format. So if I go over to my daily notes with this infinite scrolling ongoing note. So this is just all one note with a new section for each day, literally going to infinity and, going all the way back to infinity as well. And that is a great example of append only, because instead of just having a note that you land on each day, like you could imagine having a note just titled daily note where you pop into each day and, delete what was in it before and just write your new day. But no, we're just going to add notes under a new day. So again, you don't have to use the daily note format, but it is a great example of how to easily use an append only format where you're not actually deleting anything that you had previously written. Okay, let's go to backlinking entities. We already talked about this a little bit with network note-taking, but I want to talk about why backlinking is so important, and there are a few reasons. I think the number one is that it most closely mimics our memory. So if you think about how our brains work for a moment, our memory relies on associations. These connections we make between things and places. We remember places that we met someone. We remember other people that we hang out with them with, and the things that we do with those people. All of these things help our memory to work, and we can actually emulate this perfectly with our notes using bidirectional backlinks like I just showed you. So we can use these to create recall hooks within our memory and within our notes. And this will not only help you take better notes, but again, it's going to actually help your memory. And going back to our brain, we're very good, whoops, sorry, I dropped my pen. We're very good at creating associations with our brains, but we're sadly not very good at storing them. And this becomes a huge Achilles heel in our thinking. I think we can all kind of recall those times where we have some great, brilliant idea, and then by the time we're capturing it, we don't really remember it. It's deeply, deeply frustrating. With note-taking, we can outsource the storage of these associations, and this turns into a bit of a superpower with our brains. And it's actually easier than ever because we have now built-in AI prompts that we can automatically add backlinks, whereas before we had to manually backlink everything. And it's still important to understand the concept of what to backlink, even though it can be done for us automatically. So a good rule of thumb is all people, places, things, projects, etc. Anything that's an entity or starts with a capital letter is generally something good to backlink. And to kind of give you an example, I've got a little voice note here that I took. And so here we can see lots of things to potentially backlink, but I thought I would just pull up the AI prompt and have it run just so that you can see. So it's going to surround everything here with a double brackets, which is how reflect denotes a backlink. So I'm going to go ahead and replace this text. And now we can see we've got a bunch of backlinks. So my doctor is backlinked. The doctor's office that I went to is backlinked. The city, Denver, and the state, Colorado, both locations are backlinked. And my partner, Barbara, is also backlinked because she is a person. So you can kind of imagine how over time in these notes, you'll just build up more and more backlinks. And again, that's how you get to that big map of ideas that I showed you earlier. Okay, this one will be pretty quick because we already talked about it, but just associating with time and place, physical space and dates aid in memory connection. So daily journaling will help with this. Your mind map might help with this. And just kind of thinking about things as a general map that exists within your head is helpful. So for example, I can look back at notes some certain number of days ago. I think I put in like 300 days ago. I think that would be roughly April 1st, which by the way, you can do here, just to kind of mention if I do 300 days ago. Oh, that would have been December, 200 days ago, maybe. I'm not sure. But you can do relative dates like that. And so if I do that, then I can kind of click back in here and I'll open this in the window here and I can see what I did back in this day. And I can almost imagine this day happening, even though it was just a weekend. So my weekend list is, a little more simple than my weekday list, but it's like, yeah, I actually now totally remember what I was doing in April, even though if you were to just ask me what I was doing on April 1st, I would obviously have no idea. Okay, final principle here, include the why. I'm going to be honest, this is something that I am trying to get better at, but fortunately it's a little bit easier with voice notes, and I'll talk about why there. But first, your notes should capture not just the facts, but also the emotions and the reasoning behind them. Ironically, this helps reduce bias. You might think that adding more emotions would kind of increase your bias, but it allows you to see why you responded a certain way to something. So if you're upset, explain why you're feeling upset, even if it's, maybe about nothing. That might be insightful in itself. Same thing for why you might be excited or happy, why a day was bad. Always include context. Now, this is something that is significantly easier to do in my mind now with voice notes, because you can just kind of ramble and it will include the context for you. It can also organize it for you. But of course, you don't have to, use AI. Just to kind of go through an example, maybe I'm doing a daily log. And so I woke up at 6:30 a.m. and felt very tired. And we can say, okay, so I felt very tired, and maybe stop to think for a second. Why did I feel tired? Did I not get enough sleep? No, actually I got 8 hours of sleep, which is very rare. So I'm going to say that I got 8 hours of sleep. And then maybe think about some other reasons why I might be tired. Well, I went out with some friends last night and had a few drinks and didn't get drunk, but was probably pretty buzzed. And sometimes that makes me feel groggy the day. So I did drink last night, might feel groggy because of it. And now I've got some context, and that could help me. Maybe the next time I go out with friends and it's a Wednesday night, I'm going to think, oh, maybe I should just have like a soda or something so that I don't feel groggy the next day. Kind of a lame example, but that's how you include context in something like a daily log. So think about these principles and how they relate. None of them are rocket science. These are all pretty common sense things, but are easy to miss if you've never actually thought about them. So review them, think about whether you actively do these things in your note-taking already, which ones you can implement, and again, kind of thinking about the first principle, think about what the easiest way you can implement them is. Don't go seek out some new complex tool. Just kind of take your own notes, even if it's in a notebook. Think about how you can start making your note-taking and capturing your thoughts more frictionless. Try doing an append-only method of note-taking. Stop editing and deleting things. Try backlinking. I do think actually that's probably one worth trying if you never have before. Take your notes or even look at your notes and just try to pinpoint all the entities that you might backlink. Associating with space and time, that's one you're going to have to play around with. I think time is probably the easiest way to start. And I think the easiest way to start doing that is just by taking daily notes. And then finally, just taking an extra moment to include a little bit of context. Include the why so that you have it there. And that's it for the principles. So again, go through these, apply them to your own note-taking. You'll probably see some heavy impacts almost immediately.